Welcome back to Class Dismissed. I'm your host Avishi Banerjee, and today we have with us Diya Daryana. She is an undergraduate student currently pursuing her degree in English and Media Studies from Ashoka University. Now the thing about Diya is she's a bit of an overachiever. Alright, back in high school, she did everything from debates, MUNs, forensics, public speaking, to sports, to community service. This girl kind of knows a lot of people through that, and that's exactly what we'll be talking about in today's episode, which is about building communities, finding your people, and making connections that really last. So we're going to talk about how she did this in high school, and as well as how she did that in college, and how you can also prepare yourself for building communities and finding your people in high school and college. So welcome, Diya. I'm so happy to have you here.
So happy to be here.
So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about your experiences in high school. What clubs were you a part of? What kind of people did you meet? And what are the checklist things that you did back in high school?
Right, so there's obviously multiple facets to that question. And as you rightly mentioned, I was heavily involved in MUN public speaking debate. At our school, it was called Forensics, which was sort of an event that was organized between my alma mater, if that's what it's called, as well as the American Community School of Jordan. So we used to compete with them year in, year out in different events such as public forum debate, extemporaneous speaking, impromptu speaking, original oratory, so on and so forth.
So a lot of performing and speaking.
Right. And MUN, of course, is known world over for high schoolers or middle schoolers being put in a simulation of the actual UN and sort of coming up with resolutions to issues in global politics and current affairs. Those are the things that I was mainly involved in, and I've always been someone who's been talkative, very chatty, and it sort of perfectly fit in with my love and interest for international relations, right? And I did go on to sort of pursue global politics in my IBDP program as well. That being said, I feel like there's a bit of a stereotype around kids who do debate and MUN that they're extremely feisty, aggressive, hard to work with, bad listeners and unable to sort of cooperate. And I do see why there's a taboo or a stigma surrounding this specific type of extracurricular activity. But it gave me some of my closest friends, and believe it or not, they're also some of the best listeners I've come across, because they're the people that I still go to all these years later to talk about whatever I'm going through or whatever is going on with me, and of course vice versa.
So you'd say that we should be friends with debaters and public speakers?
For sure.
And people who do MUN?
100%. I mean, are they the easiest at all times? No. But then, you have your theatre kids, you have your art kids, everyone has their quirks and differences, but I think MUN kids and debate kids are sort of hated on quite a bit, and I disagree that they're not cooperative or not good in group settings. In fact, if anything, the whole point of MUN is to come together at the end of 3 or 4 days of debating and come together to form a resolution, right, in a real world context.
Right.
So I think MUN kids and debate kids have great public speaking skills, of course, but also great collaboration and sort of teamwork skills, which are obviously super important when working in a larger context.
Right, so speaking of people who are kind of challenging to work with or maybe difficult, I'm going to cut straight to the chase. You worked with a lot of people at your time in high school as well as at your 3 years in undergrad. So what are some of the biggest challenges you've had to face with working with people? Can you also tell us from a leadership perspective as well as a team member perspective?
Right, so this sounds a bit like a first world problem, because of course you hear about people not wanting to do pick up their end of the slack or do their end of the bargain, but I've been lucky enough and also unfortunate enough to always be in groups where everyone wants to take the lead, everyone wants to have take charge and sort of take responsibility for everything. And I think this saying goes rightly that too many cooks spoil the broth, right? Everyone can't sort of be controlling everything, and sometimes it actually pays to sort of take the back seat and let someone else have a chance to direct things, which is not to say that a democratic leadership style doesn't work. Of course, every team member should ideally have a voice and a say in decisions that are being made on behalf of the entire group. But working with too many strong-headed people can be challenging at times as well. At that point in time, what I found to be helpful in those situations is always establishing a relationship that is both professional but also judiciously friendly.
Right.
If your team members, in whatever context it may be, whether it was on the swim team where I remember when I was in the 9th grade, I was racing with 11th and 12th graders who obviously much bigger, much scarier, and a little bit more daunting for me.
Right.
But it helps a lot to have a relationship where you can talk to them and they can talk to you, even outside the context of just what you're doing for a particular assignment, or in that case for the swim team, right?
So that's seeing them as people and not just the
Right,
people you're
right.
working with.
I mean, a team really only works when you're able to see who's strong and who's good at what, and capitalize on each person's strength while giving them the opportunity to maybe learn and work on their weaknesses. Something really important actually that I want to bring up in context of this conversation is the best way to build a community is to not go into it with the intent of wanting to make friends. I think making friends is a very organic process that happens when you meet people who are of similar age or similar interests. So yeah, I think building friendships is at the very core of building a strong community, and then from there on, when you have an established level of comfort and an established level of sort of trust within one another, it's easy to direct a group and get the work done.
And speaking of which, what do you think has been your best leadership position? A chance where you really feel like you did a good job at being a leader, directing a bunch of people, getting a goal done, and just working with a whole group of people and leading them in such a way that they also felt comfortable, safe, and confident being in that group.
Right. So, for most students who've been doing MUN for a very long time, I think the peak of your career is when you make the secretariat. But for me, I think, and a lot of my friends, if they'll end up watching this, will disagree with it. I really enjoyed mentoring younger kids. I think being an MUN mentor and working with 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th graders was the most fulfilling for me. Because contrary to popular belief, I think even chatty, angsty middle schoolers have a lot to say, and they make a lot of sense in what they're talking about. So for all the high schoolers watching, I'm sure you'll find some senior in school who takes you seriously and who wants to hear what you have to say. It's just about finding the right people, and not all of us are scary, of course. And I think when you're sitting in front of a room of, I think, 40 to 45 middle schoolers on a weekly basis, it starts off being a little bit scary because it feels like a them versus you situation, where there's strength in numbers, and then there's you who has authority.
Right, there's power dynamic.
Right. But I think some of my not closest, but some of the most fulfilling friendships that I've had, or fruitful friendships that I've developed, are students that are my younger sister's age. So people who are 3 years, 4 years younger than me, who had that courage to sort of approach me and ask questions or challenge what I thought.
Right.
And I appreciate that, because it takes a lot for a piddly little middle schooler to come up to someone who's like towering over them and be like, maybe there's another way of thinking about it, which you wouldn't have initially thought about.
Right.
So obviously working with these kids, and then obviously now all of them are getting into college, it's really a proud older sister moment to see everyone crack their dream schools and whatnot.
Right.
But seeing them at that age and stage where they're just figuring their voice out, figuring their interests out, was for me the best experience for sure.
That sounds so lovely. I think having a mentor, having someone older to guide you is really important.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about a mentor you've had that's really helped guide you, an older person that has just been there for you and held you strong?
For sure. So my global politics teacher, who also taught me individuals and societies, which is an MYP subject. So I had her from 9th through 12th grade. Huge shout out to you. You've been such a blessing and really got me through high school. I think obviously a teacher-student relation always starts off in a professional classroom setup. But I traveled a lot with the school team for MUN. So I went to Hyderabad for HMUN India, as well as Beijing for HMUN China, I think both in 2019. And that's where you really get to see your teachers as real human beings who have families, life stories of their own, and really bond and connect with them. And I think to this day, I really look up to her for the way she conducted classes, but just for her general people skills, and the fact that she was always available to talk about any topic under the sun. And of course, I really was inspired by a lot of my seniors who really juggled a lot of things and were so approachable through and through. But COVID obviously kind of got in the way of that, and we didn't really get much time to bond with our seniors as much as any of us would have liked.
And coming back to working with people, your own age or in your own skill set in a professional capacity, even in college, why do you like working with people so much? Why do you like the idea of building community so much? Why do you find it so important? What is your favorite part about working with so many people?
Right. So we often hear people talking about how it's super important to be on the same wavelength as those around you. I think that's overrated. I think being on the same wavelength can turn stifling after a certain point in time, because then you create an echo chamber of people who think the same way as you do, and no one's really challenging you to go beyond. And high school and college, high school especially, and then of course college once you sort of get out into the world by yourself, is the place to figure things out for yourself and be challenged, so that when you enter the corporate world, you're not confronted with things that you've sort of never seen before. Obviously, things will change with time and new experiences as and when you unlock these new levels of your life. But it's good to know and respect that you can be wrong at times, that there can be other ways of looking at the same situation.
It's important for us to look for opposing perspectives.
For sure. So I actually love the fact that there are people out there who think differently than I do, who have a different worldview, because I'd much rather at the age of 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 hear that I'm wrong or be corrected or be exposed to new experiences than to enter the working world later and not have ever met any opposition and take it badly at that point in time. And that, I think, is the most important part of being a good group member, is to be able to take criticism not personally but constructively, and to want to constantly change and better yourself, because the benefit of the group is if everyone's participating to the best of their abilities, whatever that may be, whatever their strengths may be. And sometimes being told that you're wrong or being explained on how you can get better is a blessing in disguise, even though it's very easy to sort of take it as someone attacking you or sort of going after you.
I think the older we get, the more we think that people might be attacking us, because we also get pretty confident about our own views, and so to experience that sort of challenge early on in life might just help you, especially when you're entering college.
For sure.
So now that you've done a few years in undergraduate and you've settled very, very well, and not just settled, you've thrived quite a bit in this university. How did you do it? Can you tell us about the community that you were given, that you were built, that surrounds you, that helps you through everything? Your community in college.
Right. So I think for anyone who's struggling to make friends, like I rightly said before, don't go into a particular situation with the intent of building a community of making friends, because as soon as you put that pressure on yourself or on someone to connect with you on the level that you're expecting them to, it's not really organic and it feels a little bit more artificial and a little bit more strained. Joining clubs is super, super helpful, because obviously, and this is the case with most colleges, that students have so much liberty and leeway to sort of start their own thing. You'll always find people with similar interests, and stuff like, okay, I wasn't, after I stopped swimming, I wasn't really into working out, but as you can see from my attire, I have a group of friends that I go to the gym with. I have a group of friends that I just like drinking tea, for example. So in like the dead of the winter, we sort of go out to grab a cup of tea. It's these small things, these small rituals that you build with people that add value and meaning to your life. And it didn't really start with, like forcing yourself into a certain group or situation, but just seeing people in your surrounding and approaching them, no matter how hard and how awkward it might seem at first.
Because you never know where it could lead, right? Like one conversation with someone after class could turn into a lifelong friendship.
And no matter where you go to college, there'll always be some preconceived notions. Of course, the Bombay-Delhi divide is so famous and so popular that Bombay kids don't get along with Delhi kids, but as luck would have it, my closest friends are all from Delhi or Gurgaon.
And you're from Bombay.
And I'm from Bombay, and I'm hardcore Bombay. Like, I live and breathe Bombay. So coming into college with just the mindset of being open to new experiences and new people and figuring it out as I go, rather than sitting and stalking people on Instagram and sort of figuring out, oh, this person's vibe is like this, because you never know who may come into your life, as you said, and who may surprise you and what value they'll bring to you. So that's super important, to just be open-minded.
So I'm really happy to hear that, like, the kind of friends that you've built, the kind of connections that you've built. Could you tell us a bit about how professionally, or in your career or in the clubs, how you've made those connections or those networks that you've built, and how that's helped you, or even your high school experiences, help you in a professional capacity?
For sure. So most of my peers from school went abroad for their undergrad, and so that kind of made me the black sheep in the group, because I landed up staying back in India. That's what felt right at the time for me, and of course, like, it's been a completely different experience. I wouldn't say it's helped me professionally per se, but just hearing to what my friends who studied in the US, UK, Canada, Australia have to say and how different their lives are now, I think after you get out of the rut of writing exams and applying to the same colleges and doing the same extracurriculars, you really learn how to be happy for other people. Right. So whether it's a friend who's studying in an Ivy League, or there's so many students who've dropped out and come back and started their own thing as well, right? You just realize that life takes its own path and everyone has a different pace of maturing, learning, and going through their own experiences. So every winter and every summer, coming back to these same people and catching up for a cup of coffee, it's just nice and wholesome to hear that the same people that you've grown up with are now, one's working at some huge company, the other one's, like into filmmaking or doing something
starting their own company.
or starting their own company.
Right.
And just knowing that people have your back no matter what,
Right.
I think that those are the friendships and those are the communities that last for a lifetime. And of course, if professionally the circles ever interlink or overlap, that's great. Then there are known faces in your
Right.
professional capacity as well.
Now, there are a lot of people who might not be as confident, extroverted, outgoing as you are. Now, could you give a little bit of advice to the people who are possibly more shy, more introvert, more anxious, don't really know where to start, but can clearly anticipate the value of having these communities? What would you say to them?
So, I think this has been a misconception that I had about myself for a very long time. Once I learned the concept of extroversion and introversion, then ambiversion as well, I'm actually more of an introvert. I think I recharge when I'm by myself, but because of having done so much public speaking, it sort of gets built into your system to be able to approach people and talk to people without that fear of judgment. Of course, at the end of the day, no one likes rejection, no one wants to be rejected, and you will always come across people who, may not take that well to you, but that's no reason to not be yourself.
Right.
You will always attract the people that are meant for you by being authentically yourself, whoever you are at that point in time. To answer your question, what helped me through my initial stages of social anxiety, even in college, was to find other introverts, actually.
Yeah.
I think introverts are really intuitive and you can very easily spot who's comfortable and who's not comfortable in a room, which is not to say that extroverts are unapproachable or, again, aggressive or feisty or mean, but when you see someone who's resonating with you in a particular situation, it's very easy to relate, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, now my friend group is a mixed bag of people from different backgrounds, different personality types, but I'd still say that the people that I feel most comfortable and most grounded around are the people who sort of deal with situations in a way that's similar to the way I deal.
Right.
Which I know sounds contradictory to what I said before, that difference of opinion and perspective is important. But right from the get-go, it's nice to have like a comfort place and a comfort space where you know that there are people who will listen and understand.
And then eventually with time you can step out of the comfort
for sure, and never say no to plans. I think I hate sleeping late, I hate going out, but never ever say no to plans. Obviously don't let your grades go up for a toss. I'm not preaching that at all, but every opportunity to go out with your friends or even to just spend time in someone's room, just gossiping, talking about nothing, just laying around, is a memory that you will cherish at some point in time later in life. So never ever say no to plans, for sure.
Alright, and now we are entering the last section of the podcast, which is called Here's the Deal. Now, you've given a lot of valuable insights into making friends and connections and networking, but now if you were to sum all of this up into one bite, can you tell us what the deal is?
So, here's the deal. You don't have to have it all figured out by the ages of 17 or 18 because you are still just a child. I think one of my friends told me this really interesting concept that when you're 18 years old, when most people, when they step out of their house for the first time, you're actually 0 years old as an adult because that's the first time you're outside your house, away from your parents, your siblings, your comfort space, right? So take every opportunity and every experience as it comes and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to get your heart broken. Don't be afraid to make the wrong friends and learn from those experiences because in the end you will always be better for it. And definitely never say no to plans, of course, that's super important, but don't also be afraid to just be yourself, which is obviously really hard to say because like I said, it's very hard to know who you are when you're just stepping out into the world and figuring things out, but some part of you will always know what's right or wrong for you and stay true to that. As long as you do that, you will definitely attract the right crowd and give it time. A lot of people go through the first couple of weeks of college feeling incredibly lonely, but find people who also feel or resonate with that same loneliness and land up forming some of the most long-lasting, sustainable and just wholesome friendships. So just give it time and be patient with yourself.
I think as much as it is important to find the right people, it's also a process finding the wrong people.
For sure.
And maybe building communities that don't work, being in friend groups that don't work for you. So I really don't think that we should be shying away from going out there, making friends. Maybe they'll last, maybe they don't. Hopefully they do. But yeah, I think all of us can have had times where we don't like the people that we're around. We don't like the people we're working with. But I think those might just teach us more. about
For sure.
life, about people, about psychology, about working with people, than
sure.
being with an echo chamber, like you
Mhm.
said. Yeah.
So a lot of my friends actually joke about it that they've come to college to do their major in economics, psychology, and minor in heartbreak, because it's very normal to grow apart from people, and I think, like you said, heartbreak and like setbacks are the worst thing that can happen to you, because that's really when you figure out how you respond to crisis, how you deal with challenges, and what is like the most fundamental aspect of building a community around yourself is being alone and figuring out who you are to begin with. And like I said again, once you figure out who that person is, or even if you have some inkling of it, of what your preferences are, what doesn't work for you, you'll end up attracting people who fit that or who challenge that in a positive way.
And lastly, so when you move out of school and you have to leave all your friends behind, you all go different places, how do you stay in touch with them? How do you make those connections last instead of fading?
Right. So, truth be told, this whole psychology of the fear of missing out, FOMO as it's called, is very, very real. You'll always feel like the grass is greener on the other side. Some people are out partying, some people are out really working and slaving their hours away at the library. But just know that everyone's down the course that they're supposed to be in, and everyone's going to have the experiences that they create for themselves or are destined to have. Here I feel like social media is super important. I think it's just nice to get that one photo a day, even if you don't end up talking to your high school best friends for like weeks on end. You just know what they're up to, and it's just comforting to know that even on the other side of the world, there are people who are looking out for you, who are celebrating every win with you, and who are there for you through every downfall. So use social media wisely, and like just share yourself and share your life freely, and the real well-wishers will always be there for you and support you through thick and thin.
And I think just letting people know what you're up to also kind of helps you in terms of them helping you back.
Oh,
right?
super important. PSA to all the high schoolers, please remember to call your parents. They're also, especially for like the older siblings who are the first children that are sort of leaving the house, parents go through so much anxiety, and it's only fair because they're going through every life experience with you.
They were your first community.
Right, they were your first community, and honestly, no matter how your relationship with your parents is, the only people that will truly have your back and who will be there with you through whatever phase of life that you're in. So for all the anxious moms and dads that are constantly calling, give the kids a little bit of a break. I think they'll come around to it, and homesickness does kick in. I promise, even if your kid is detached and whatnot. But college going students, call your parents. They just love you. They just want to check in on you and make sure you're okay. And family group chats, keep sending stickers, emojis, whatever it is. Just a thumbs up works. And trust me, like going back home is the most safe, comforting, warm feeling, because you know you're going back to your people who are always there, and that's super nice.
It is super nice. And it was super nice having you here and talking about your experiences with your friends and your communities and your college and your school. And I think we all have a lot to learn from you, being such a social MVP. So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Dia. And I will see you all in the next episode of Class Dismissed.